She rushed into the sleek boardroom, heart pounding, trying to catch her breath. Her 5-year-old son had been sick that morning, and now, minutes late to the most important meeting of her career, she faced the coldest stare she'd ever seen. "Useless," the CEO spat, his voice cutting through the room. "You're fired, effective immediately." The room went silent. Her career, her dreams, everything she'd worked for seemed to shatter in an instant. But was this really the end for Melanie? Could a single mother, humiliated and dismissed in front of billion-dollar deals, turn everything around? Before we reveal the full story, make sure to hit follow and join us, because what happens next is a journey of courage, resilience, and unexpected triumph.
Melanie Thompson's morning began like any other, yet she sensed, deep down, that nothing would be ordinary today. The sun was barely peeking through the city skyline, but the moment she heard Oliver's cry from the next room, she knew something was wrong. Her 5-year-old son had always been a bundle of energy, but this morning he was unusually pale, shivering and clutching his tiny stomach. "Mommy, it hurts," Oliver whimpered, his voice trembling. Melanie's heart clenched. She scooped him up instantly, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down like a storm on her shoulders. As a single mom, she had grown used to juggling crises, but this one felt heavier, more urgent. "Don't worry, baby. I've got you," she whispered, stroking his hair, trying to mask the panic rising inside her. She dialed the hospital's emergency line as she hurriedly packed a small bag with clothes, snacks, and Oliver's favorite blanket. "Yes, he's running a fever. 5 years old. Yes, we're on our way," she said, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. Time was running faster than she ever imagined possible. Meanwhile, in the towering glass building downtown, Melanie's mind was also on her career. Today was supposed to be monumental, a crucial meeting with Robert Langford, the notoriously ruthless CEO of Langford Tech, and Seth Parker, CEO of Parker Innovations. The meeting could potentially secure a $3.5 billion partnership, an opportunity that could change Melanie's life. She called the office, explaining as concisely as she could. "Hi, this is Melanie Thompson. I'm running a bit late. Oliver's not well, and I'm taking him to the hospital. I'll get there as soon as possible." She hoped that her honesty would be enough. After all, no one could deny the urgency of a child's health. By the time she parked outside the building and entered the lobby, her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. How could she balance being a dedicated mother and a competent professional? How could she prove her worth when life itself had thrown her into chaos? As she reached the sleek, modern conference room, the tension was palpable. Seth Parker, calm and attentive, was reviewing notes with his usual meticulous precision. But it was Robert Langford's presence that made the air thick with intimidation. His eyes, sharp and cold, immediately zeroed in on her the moment she entered, slightly out of breath and flustered. "You're late," Robert barked, voice dripping with disdain. "I warned you this meeting was critical. Do you think personal excuses matter in the world of billion-dollar deals?" Melanie swallowed hard, steadying her shaking voice. I called ahead, Robert. My son, he wasn't feeling well, and I had to take him to the hospital. I wanted to be transparent." Robert cut her off, waving a dismissive hand. "Useless! That's what you are, Melanie. Useless!" His eyes gleamed with the arrogance of a man convinced of his invincibility. "If you can't even manage your life outside this room, how could you possibly contribute to something of this magnitude? Pack your things and leave. You're fired, effective immediately." A hush fell over the room. Seth's expression hardened. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Melanie's heart pounded not from fear, but from the sting of injustice. She felt the weight of every single mother who had been underestimated, undervalued, dismissed simply for caring for a child. "Robert," Seth began, voice measured but sharp, "this is not the way to treat talent or humanity." Robert smirked, unconcerned. "Seth, you either take my side or we don't make this deal. I can't have incompetence in the room while we negotiate billions. Choose quickly." Seth leaned back, the tension in his jaw visible. "You know what, Robert? No. If this is how you treat people who are dedicated, honest, and transparent, then I'm out. I'm withdrawing from this partnership. I won't associate with someone who confuses empathy with weakness." Melanie blinked, stunned. The weight of Robert's cruelty was immediate, but the ripple of consequences was already forming. Her dismissal had cost a $3.5 billion deal just by exposing Robert's arrogance and lack of judgment. As she gathered her belongings, Melanie's mind was racing. Her chest hurt from both fear and pride. Fear because she was now unemployed. Pride because she hadn't bowed to humiliation. She held her head high, telling herself, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. Seth's eyes followed her as she left the room, silently acknowledging her strength. "Not everyone can withstand that," he murmured to himself, almost as if predicting the impact Melanie would make in the days to come. Outside the building, Melanie exhaled deeply. The city hummed around her, oblivious to the battle she had just faced. But in her heart, she carried a spark that refused to be extinguished, a fire that would guide her through adversity, and perhaps turn the tables in ways no one expected. As she returned to Oliver's side at the hospital, she whispered, brushing his hair from his forehead, "We'll get through this, my love. Mommy's not giving up. Not ever." In that quiet hospital room, with the city skyline gleaming through the windows, Melanie realized something profound. The world might try to label her as useless, but she knew the truth. Her worth wasn't measured by the arrogance of others, it was defined by her courage, her heart, and her relentless drive to rise no matter how many times life knocked her down. And somewhere, far above the chaos of the day, a man named Seth Parker had already recognized a rare gem, someone whose strength and integrity would change the course of business and perhaps life itself.
The days following the meeting felt surreal to Melanie. She walked through her apartment, the hum of the city outside her window, like a distant world where she no longer belonged. Her mind replayed Robert's words over and over. Useless. The sting of humiliation lingered, but she refused to let it define her. Oliver, oblivious to corporate cruelty, was her anchor. He clung to her every morning, a tiny hand gripping hers, eyes wide and trusting. "Mommy, are you okay?" he asked one day as she made pancakes, trying to force a smile. Melanie crouched down, brushing crumbs from his cheek. "I'm okay, baby. Mommy's stronger than she looks," she said softly, kissing the top of his head. "Strength isn't loud," she reminded herself. "It's quiet. It's persistent. It's refusing to bow when life gets unfair." Then, unexpectedly, a call changed everything. Melanie answered, thinking it was just another rejection letter from a temp agency or a routine follow-up. But the voice on the other end was calm, composed, and carried an unmistakable air of authority. "Hello, is this Melanie Thompson?" "Yes, speaking," she replied, her heart beating a little faster. "This is Seth Parker," the voice continued. "I was at the meeting last week, the one where Robert Langford dismissed you so unfairly. I've been reviewing your background, your experience, and your achievements. I want to offer you a position in my company, something meaningful, with real responsibility." Melanie's hands trembled slightly. She hadn't expected this. A door that seemed permanently closed had suddenly swung wide open. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Seth replied, with a hint of a smile in his voice. "You deserve a chance to show what you can do. I've seen potential, and I don't make mistakes when it comes to talent." The next week, Melanie found herself stepping into a sleek office that felt both intimidating and exhilarating. She met the team she would lead, all talented professionals, ready for change. Seth was there too, observing her with quiet encouragement. "You're going to do great here," he said, offering a handshake that conveyed more than words.
There was a respect and an understanding that went deeper than corporate formalities. "I trust you." Melanie's first days were a whirlwind. She dove into projects with meticulous care, implementing new strategies, organizing teams, and introducing ideas that seemed simple but had profound impact. She reminded herself constantly, success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become while achieving it. Seth watched her closely, impressed not just by her intelligence, but by her dedication. Melanie was relentless, not just in work, but in character. She never complained about long hours or difficult decisions. She treated every setback as a lesson, every criticism as fuel to improve. One evening, as the office emptied and the city lights shimmered outside the window, Seth stayed behind. Melanie was reviewing quarterly projections, a mountain of papers scattered before her. He approached quietly. "You know, most people would crumble after what happened with Robert, but you turned setbacks into momentum. That's rare." Melanie looked up, tired but resolute. "I don't have a choice. I have a son depending on me, and I refuse to let anyone define my worth. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it." Seth smiled, a subtle admiration in his eyes. "You're going to change this company. And maybe the world." As the weeks passed, Melanie's influence became undeniable. Projects she spearheaded began yielding remarkable results. Productivity soared, client satisfaction improved, and morale in the office skyrocketed. Seth's trust in her wasn't just professional anymore, it was personal. He began to see her in moments beyond business, in subtle gestures, her quiet determination, the way she treated her team and her son with unwavering love. And yet, Melanie remained humble. Every achievement reminded her of the morning she had faced Robert's cruelty. Every success was a silent affirmation. "No one gets to tell me I'm useless." By the end of her first month, Melanie had not only proven her worth, but had started reshaping the company's culture. Seth observed this transformation and realized something he hadn't expected. Respect was turning into admiration. Admiration into something warmer, more personal. One night, as Melanie left the office, Seth caught up with her in the elevator. "You know, you've got a way of making people believe in themselves. Even me." Melanie smiled, a mix of fatigue and pride. "Maybe that's the only way to survive in this world, by believing in ourselves when no one else does." The elevator doors closed, but the spark between them lingered in the quiet hum of the building. A new chapter had begun, not just for Melanie, but for the company, for Seth, and for the life she was building with Oliver at the center. Outside, the city continued its relentless rhythm, oblivious to the quiet victories of a mother who refused to be labeled, a woman who had turned humiliation into opportunity, and a future that promised triumph, love, and transformation.
Melanie Thompson's days blurred into nights as she poured herself into her work, but each challenge only strengthened her resolve. She often thought of Oliver, who had become both her motivation and her measure of courage. Every decision she made, every strategy she proposed was not just for herself, it was for him. "I rise for us," she whispered one evening as she tucked him into bed, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead, "and we will rise together." Her influence at Seth Parker's company quickly became impossible to ignore. Within weeks, her innovative strategies began reshaping departments that had long stagnated under outdated practices. Marketing campaigns that Melanie suggested connected with clients on a personal level, operations became more efficient, and morale improved across the board. One morning, Seth walked into a meeting where Melanie was presenting her latest project proposal. Charts, statistics, and projections illuminated the screen, but it wasn't just the numbers that impressed him. It was the clarity, confidence, and foresight behind them. "Melanie," Seth said, leaning slightly on the edge of the table, "these projections, they're not just good, they're exceptional. You've taken something that seemed impossible and made it tangible." Melanie smiled modestly, brushing a hand through her hair.
"It's all about seeing potential where others see obstacles," she replied. "Every challenge is just an opportunity in disguise." Seth's gaze lingered a moment longer than necessary. He couldn't help but notice the quiet strength she exuded, the way she stood her ground, respected her team, and yet remained approachable and empathetic. It was magnetic, and he felt the pull of admiration growing into something more personal, something he hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, Melanie's success wasn't limited to numbers. She became a source of inspiration for her colleagues. Late nights in the office were often accompanied by her encouragement, her belief in her team's capabilities. "We can do more than we think," she told them one evening. "Don't wait for permission to excel. Create your own opportunities." Word of her achievements began circulating beyond the company. Clients praised her dedication, competitors took note of her innovative approach, and investors started viewing the company in a new light. Melanie's transformation from a single mom struggling to manage life's chaos to a powerhouse in corporate strategy was undeniable. One rainy afternoon, Seth found himself standing by Melanie's office window, watching her guide her team through a particularly challenging project. He spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. "She's extraordinary, more than I realized, not just for this company, but for me." Melanie looked up, catching his reflection in the glass. For a brief moment, she felt a warmth, a recognition beyond professional respect. "We're stronger together," she said, almost instinctively. "I believe in leading with integrity and vision. That's how real growth happens." Seth nodded, silently agreeing. He realized that her growth wasn't just elevating the company, it was pushing him to see beyond the boardroom, to value people for their courage, not just their credentials. The right person can change everything, he thought, watching her. And Melanie is that person. Despite the successes and recognition, Melanie remained grounded. She knew that life was not just about climbing corporate ladders or achieving financial victories. It was about resilience, about holding on to one's principles even when the world tried to undermine them. Every time she received praise or acknowledgement, she reminded herself, this is just the beginning. Real triumph comes from lifting others as you rise. Her nights, however, were never far from Oliver. She balanced her growing responsibilities with being the kind of mother who listened, nurtured, and inspired. One evening, after a particularly long day, she found him asleep with a crayon-drawn "Good job, Mommy" poster on his bedroom wall. Tears pricked her eyes. "I rise for you, Oliver, and we're going to conquer everything together." As the weeks turned into months, Melanie's role in the company became indispensable. She had not only driven growth, but had also instilled a new culture of respect, collaboration, and bold vision. Seth observed, increasingly aware of his feelings, recognizing that admiration was blossoming into something deeper. One evening, as they wrapped up a long strategy session, Seth lingered by her desk. "You've changed the company, Melanie, and I can't ignore the fact that you've changed me too," he admitted quietly. Melanie looked up, meeting his gaze with steady eyes. People who refuse to be defined by limitations, they change the world, and maybe sometimes they change hearts too. Seth smiled, feeling the weight of her words sink in. The connection between them was undeniable, built on respect, shared vision, and the recognition of courage in the face of adversity. Outside, the city thrummed with life, unaware of the quiet revolution happening in one office. A single mother, underestimated by one, celebrated by another, shaping not just her own future, but the destiny of everyone around her. Melanie was no longer just surviving, she was thriving, proving that resilience, talent, and integrity could transform not just careers, but hearts.
The morning air was crisp, but Melanie Thompson hardly noticed it. She was deep in thought, reviewing expansion plans that could transform Seth Parker's company into a market leader. The numbers were promising, but more than that, the strategy reflected her vision: efficiency, innovation, and above all, respect for the people making it happen. Seth entered the office quietly, observing her at work. "Melanie," he said, leaning against the doorway, "what you've done here, it's more than I could have imagined. We're growing faster than expected, and it's all because of your leadership." Melanie looked up, a faint smile on her lips. "I'm just making the right choices. Every business, like every person, deserves a chance to prove what it's capable of. I just make sure no potential goes to waste." Seth studied her for a moment. There was something magnetic about the way she spoke. Not arrogance, not desperation,
but quiet conviction. He felt the pull stronger than ever, a mix of admiration and something warmer, something personal. Meanwhile, Robert Langford was beginning to feel the ripple effects of his arrogance. The cancellation of the $3.5 billion deal had caused murmurs among investors, but it was Melanie's rising influence that was striking the hardest. He had heard whispers of the single mom who had turned Seth's company around, and it pricked his pride more than he wanted to admit. Melanie, however, was focused on the work, not on revenge. She had learned that true strength came from creating, not retaliating. Yet she couldn't ignore the sense of satisfaction that came when news arrived that Robert's company had started to lose major contracts, clients jumping ship to her projects. One afternoon, Seth called her into his office. "I want you to lead negotiations with some of our key acquisitions," he said, his tone serious but trusting. "It's a big step, but I know you can handle it." Melanie raised an eyebrow. "You mean taking over companies that could compete with ours?" "Exactly," Seth said. "I trust your judgment. You know what to do." The responsibility was enormous, but Melanie felt the familiar fire ignite inside her. She remembered Robert's words, the humiliation, the dismissal. But now she was armed with credibility, vision, and determination. This isn't about revenge, she reminded herself. It's about showing that courage and talent can't be ignored. Days turned into weeks as Melanie negotiated contracts, analyzed financials, and convinced hesitant boards that Seth's vision was worth trusting. Every meeting, every decision, was a reminder of how far she had come. And as Seth watched her work, his admiration deepened into something undeniable. He admired not just her mind, but her heart, her resilience, and the way she balanced ambition with compassion. One evening, after a particularly challenging negotiation, Melanie and Seth walked together to the parking garage. Rain drizzled lightly, making the city lights shimmer like a million tiny stars. "You know," Seth said, glancing at her, "I've been in business a long time. I've seen brilliant people, ambitious people, but rarely someone like you. You lead with courage, integrity, and heart. That's rare, Melanie. Rare and powerful." Melanie paused, feeling the weight of his words. "I don't do this for recognition," she said softly. "I do it because I believe in what's possible when people are treated with respect and given a chance. That's all the recognition I need." Seth nodded, touched by her humility. And yet, somehow, the world notices anyway. As Melanie's influence expanded, the tension with Robert escalated. He began noticing his contracts slipping further, his employees leaving for positions under Melanie's guidance. The man who once dismissed her as useless now faced the reality of her competence, the embodiment of everything he had underestimated. Meanwhile, Melanie remained steadfast. She spent long nights planning, not out of spite, but because she believed in building something lasting, something meaningful. Each victory, each successful negotiation reinforced her conviction. Respect earns loyalty. Courage earns success. One late night, as the city lights glimmered through the office windows, Seth approached Melanie's desk. "You've turned the tide. The company, the culture. You've done more than anyone could have imagined. And I've noticed you. More than I probably should." Melanie looked up, eyes meeting his. There was a flicker of something unspoken, a bond forged not by circumstance, but by respect, shared vision, and unyielding courage. And somewhere in the background, Robert Langford's empire was quietly crumbling, a stark reminder that arrogance and cruelty are never stronger than talent and integrity. Melanie had become more than a rising star. She had become a force, a mother, a leader, a woman who refused to be defined by the limits others imposed on her. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the quiet revolution happening within the office walls. But inside, a single mother's determination was reshaping the world one decision at a time. And Seth, who had once been a bystander to Robert's arrogance, now stood beside her, witnessing the rise of a true powerhouse. Melanie Thompson sat at her desk, reviewing the acquisition proposal that would change everything. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of her computer and the distant city sounds filtering through the glass windows. Today wasn't just another workday. It was the moment she had been preparing for since Robert Langford had humiliated her. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about justice, integrity, and proving that talent and courage could never be ignored. Seth Parker entered the office, holding a cup of coffee. "Ready?" he asked, his voice calm but filled with anticipation. Melanie looked up, determination blazing in her eyes. "As ready as I'll ever be. Let's show him what happens when arrogance meets competence." Their target, Robert Langford's company. Once a titan in the industry, it had been faltering ever since losing the $3.5 billion partnership. Melanie had watched from the sidelines as clients abandoned him, investors grew wary, and employees left in search of better opportunities. Now, she was about to step in, not to destroy, but to rebuild, and to show that leadership built on respect, not fear, produces true growth. The meeting room at Robert's office was tense. Robert sat at the head of the table, his usual smug expression in place, unaware that the woman he had dismissed as useless now held the power to reshape his empire. "Melanie," he sneered, trying to mask his discomfort, "I don't know why you're here. Surely you're aware you have no authority in this matter." Melanie smiled calmly, her confidence radiating. "Actually, Robert, I do. As a representative of Seth Parker's company, I am here to negotiate the acquisition of your firm, and I believe we can turn it into something greater, together." Robert blinked, his arrogance faltering. He hadn't anticipated this. The woman he had humiliated was now leading a force stronger than him, a reminder that underestimation can be costly. Seth spoke from the side, his voice steady. "Robert, this isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about building something sustainable, something powerful. Melanie has proven her capability, and we're confident she can lead this transition successfully." Melanie outlined her vision: restructuring operations, investing in innovation, empowering employees, and creating new opportunities for growth. Her voice was calm, clear, and commanding. She wasn't just selling a plan, she was showing the future, one that Robert could no longer control. As the meeting progressed, Robert realized that resistance was futile. Melanie's insight, strategy, and poise left no room for doubt. This was no longer a negotiation. This was a demonstration of what leadership truly looked like. Finally, Melanie leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Robert, I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here to ensure that your legacy doesn't crumble because of pride and arrogance. We can make this work, but it requires honesty, collaboration, and respect, something I hope you can still embrace." The room fell silent. Robert's face, once smug, now reflected the weight of reality. He had underestimated her, underestimated the power of resilience and intelligence combined. Weeks later, under Melanie's guidance, the acquisition was complete. She led the integration process with precision, transforming Robert's struggling company into a thriving part of Seth Parker's growing empire. Productivity soared, employee morale returned, and clients were impressed by the innovative approach she brought. Seth, watching from his office, couldn't hide his pride. "You did it," he said softly. "You turned what could have been a bitter rivalry into a triumph of skill and integrity." Melanie smiled, thinking of Oliver, who had been her inspiration throughout. Courage isn't just standing up to others. It's rising every day for those who depend on you, even when the world doubts you. And amidst the professional triumph, a personal connection had grown. Seth approached her one evening, the city lights reflecting in the glass around them. "Melanie, I've admired your strength from the beginning, but I can't ignore that I feel something more, something real." Melanie looked at him, heart steady, courage unwavering. "Seth, I feel it too, but it's more than admiration. It's respect, partnership, and trust. That's the foundation for everything." He took her hand gently. "Then let's build everything together." The world outside moved on, unaware of the quiet power shift that had taken place. But inside, a single mother had turned humiliation into opportunity, injustice into triumph, and courage into love. Melanie's story wasn't just about winning a business battle. It was about proving that dignity, resilience, and integrity could overcome any obstacle, no matter how formidable. Robert Langford watched from the sidelines, a reminder that arrogance and cruelty always carry consequences. Meanwhile, Melanie, now at the helm of two powerful companies, had not only secured her professional victory, but had also carved a path for her son, for Seth, and for herself, proving that the right combination of courage, talent, and heart could change everything. The morning sun poured through the windows of Melanie Thompson's office, illuminating the bustling activity around her. Two companies now thrived under her guidance, Seth Parker's firm and the once struggling Langford Tech, which she had turned around with skill, vision, and unyielding determination. The city below buzzed with life, but Melanie had learned that true fulfillment came from the impact she created, not the noise of the world. Oliver ran into her office, backpack bouncing against his small frame. "Mommy, guess what? I got an A on my spelling test." Melanie laughed, scooping him up. "That's amazing, Oliver. I'm so proud of you." She held him close, savoring the joy of these small victories. Amidst billion-dollar deals and corporate transformations, these moments reminded her why she fought so hard. Her son was the heartbeat of her courage. Seth entered quietly, watching the interaction with a soft smile. "You really do it all," he said. "You're incredible." Melanie set Oliver down and met Seth's gaze, a warmth radiating in her eyes. "I couldn't do any of this without people I trust, and I've learned something important. Strength doesn't come from fighting alone. It comes from lifting others as you rise." Seth nodded, stepping closer. "You've lifted so much more than a company, Melanie. You've lifted hearts, including mine." Melanie's heart fluttered. She had felt the connection grow over months of collaboration, trust, and shared vision. Now, standing together, it felt natural, inevitable. "Seth, I feel the same. It's not just admiration anymore. It's everything." As they held hands, a sense of completion washed over her. This wasn't just a romantic connection. It was a partnership built on respect, trust, and shared values. They were equals, collaborators, and now companions. The phone rang on Melanie's desk, bringing her attention back to work. A new opportunity had emerged, an international expansion that would require her strategic insight and leadership. She smiled at Seth. "Another challenge, but one I'm ready for." Seth grinned. "And I'll be right there with you." Weeks later, the culmination of their efforts became undeniable. Langford Tech, once a symbol of arrogance and misjudgment, had transformed under Melanie's leadership. Employees were thriving, projects exceeded expectations, and clients praised the company's innovation. Robert Langford, who had once mocked her, now watched from a distance, powerless against the reality she had created. Melanie often reflected on that first humiliating day. "You're useless," Robert had said, but that single moment of cruelty had sparked a fire she would never extinguish. It reminded her of a truth she carried into every boardroom, every challenge, and every difficult decision. Your worth is defined not by others' judgments, but by the courage and integrity with which you live your life. Evenings at home became sacred. Oliver, Seth, and Melanie shared dinners filled with laughter, stories, and dreams for the future. Their home, once a space of chaos and worry, had become a sanctuary of love, hope, and stability. One night, as the city lights shimmered outside, Seth held Melanie's hand, his voice soft. "I never imagined that meeting would lead to this, to us, to everything we've built together." Melanie smiled, eyes shining. She said, "Life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes the biggest setbacks become the greatest opportunities, and sometimes the people who doubt you teach you the most about your own strength." They embraced not just as lovers, but as partners who had shared a journey of trials, triumphs, and transformation. Melanie had conquered not only professional obstacles, but personal ones as well. She had proven that resilience, integrity, and courage could turn humiliation into victory, fear into strength, and opportunity into a legacy. In the quiet moments, Melanie whispered to herself, thinking of Oliver, Seth, and the path they had walked together. "We rise, not just for ourselves, but for those who believe in us, those who depend on us, and those who dared to dream alongside us." And in that rise, she realized the ultimate truth. A mother's courage, a woman's vision, and a heart that refuses to be defeated can change the world. Melanie Thompson had turned a single moment of cruelty into a lifetime of triumph, showing that no obstacle is greater than the determination to succeed, love, and lead with integrity. As the city pulsed below, Melanie, Seth, and Oliver looked out the window together, ready for the next chapter, knowing that with courage, unity, and heart, there was nothing they couldn't overcome.
And so, Melanie's life proved that you should never underestimate the strength of a single mom. What seemed like humiliation turned into her greatest triumph. What was meant as an insult became a victory. Because respect, courage, and dignity have no price, and sometimes they cost billions to those who look down on others. If you believe stories like Melanie's deserve to be told, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Here, every story brings a lesson of strength, justice, and hope. And remember, never underestimate someone who fights every day to succeed.